praten. Oké, verontschuldigingen voor de mensen die via Zoom zijn aangesloten, maar we hadden hier even wat problemen. Dus we gaan verder naar... Ja. Kijken wat ik nu... Dit weer. Ja, even kijken. Schakelt hij nu over? Want ik zie hem wel op mijn eigen scherm, maar niet op scherm 2. Dat is toch wel heel interessant dit allemaal. Even kijken. Nou weer.
Ja, als je nou dat vindt ook, hè? Misschien niet, als je naar hierin gaat. Ja, zie je. Hier toch. Hier even klik. Ja. Nu zit hij daar. Dus het is waar de muis zit.
Oh, oké. Ja, oké. I've learned a lot. I'm very happy with this nice cooperation between law and urban planning and more technical specialists. Okay, learning objectives. Okay, I will switch now over to the concepts. Now, we have seen this before in the first lecture. Land as many sites you can look at. And as reflected in the triangle, we will at the end of the lecture return to this and we will not this administration about land use, land ownership, land values. And I think until now we have looked very much to what I would say is the traditional land administration. And why did we start the cadastre? It was on side is to have knowledge about the land value for taxation, and on the other hand, the registration of rights, restrictions, and responsibilities, but maybe from the perspective of the owner and people having rights on the land. Less on land use itself. Now, you can register, it is used as a building on it, there's a farm on it. Of course, you can find it in traditional cadastre also, but less on the planning of the land use. And now we will focus mainly on the land use planning, but we will then also see that it influences also the land ownership. And because of that, there's also a connection with land value. First question to you. We have a nice picture of Chicago. You could say the US, country of the free market. Landowner is first. Is this the result of the market forces? What do you think?
Yeah.
There's also somewhere a Trump Tower over there. And you would maybe say the tower is there because I want it.
It's not of the market because when incorporates in buildings, you don't have any marks for green. Those are also important, but the visibility is here because they don't have money.
Yeah, that's a strong point indeed. You see only the result of individuals taking opportunity to build. Seems like that indeed, and you also recognize the problem of urban planning itself. You need also green spaces. You cannot only have buildings and roads. The city is not very nice. You cannot really enjoy it. You cannot live. So indeed, you notice there tension. Individual owner who wants to make a big profit, as it seems, and yeah, the rights of the people living using that city. We will come back to that. Because I have also another example. But what do others think? It's really only the owners deciding what's happening with this. Your impression? Yeah, that's very good. You also said that there should be some zoning laws. It cannot be that it is all private owner that decides what's happening. So there should be some zoning laws, but on the other hand, you also feel that they will influence it. They will not be for it. That they don't get too much restrictions. All remarks, you see this? You think? Of course, you are, I think, both right. And when you look at it, there is indeed a problem with the planning, but there is a problem with the planning. So there is a planning. There's indeed a zoning plan, and here I took this picture from you can access it. By the way, it looks a bit old-fashioned. When you look at it, it's still the same. It's a bit Windows 3.11 to me, the way they build it. But there is a zoning. But indeed, what you say, who's in charge here? Is that are the big corporations, or is it really the Chicago Land Use Commission that's in charge? That's indeed a question. But what we can see here is that the result is not because the owners as such want something, and so there is a free market, so the highest bidder will get the land and can invest as much as he's able to. So there is not the market as such working. When we are talking about land use, so even in the US, you see there is some influence by the government in the public interest, but you can wonder if you observe. I don't see any parks out there. It is very much concrete. Yeah, are they really in charge, or are the big corporations behind it that are lobbying? It's a question. There are several questions you can ask. We are going to have deep look in it. Because indeed the government is having influence on development plan. And I take this, and for now we switch from the US perspective to Europe, from Article 1 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And when you see that the rights of the owner are mentioned in the first line, but what you see is that Article 1 also says that those provisions shall not impair the right of the state to enforce such laws as it needs to control the use of property in accordance with general interest. And that's also true for land use planning. The whole concept of land use planning restricts, in fact, the private interest, the ownership of the private owner in favor of the public interest. So there are two sides, and now we will understand when you fall out the other lectures I've given, that always we return to the balance. Here you also see the balance, or one hand private interest. I want to do with my land what I want, but that is not always the right solution. And those parks are an excellent example. You also need to take account that the bigger picture, the public interest, But now, then the next question is, what is the public interest when we are talking about land use? One thing I will write it down are parks. Are there other things we think that park, green area, green spaces? Are there other reasons why the government is involved in land use? Why they want to plan the land use? Yeah. 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 Writing it. Yes, infrastructure. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit distracted. So looking at this, I get feeling where something wrong, but that's not sure. Okay, thank you. Other reasons?
We don't want land use to be
Yeah. Conflicts in general, but especially next to each other. You don't want industry, heavy industry next to a neighborhood with people living over there. Yeah.
distribution of services.
Yeah. Schools. Parking also. Those are very good examples. What you see is that when plans are made, those are the things that cost money. So private, when you're only looking at private interest, you would say, okay, one side of the private interest is of course also to have a hospital nearby, but that's very limited. This is our general interest, people using city. And when we bring this back to if I would ask for you one core concept that's behind all this, land is, that's the word I'm searching for. Because those are very concrete cases why we want land use planning. But what's the whole problem behind it? Land is. So land for all of us. I could say, of course, about billions of people living on Earth. They're competing. And those are all examples of competing interests. And it can be because you want, the question is, do you want industry on this land or park? But can also be because of the conflicts of neighbors. And do you want industry next to housing? It has all to do with economy. It's scarce. So we don't want the owner to make decisions. Of course, we don't give him or her all freedom to make decisions. We don't want to leave the land use to the free market. There should be some kind of control. Otherwise, the soft interest will be left behind. Park doesn't make money. Healthcare, schools, parking, of course, we will all agree. Even the most greedy developer, I think, will agree it should be somewhere, but he doesn't want to pay for it. So government should protect those interests. And what you see, that there's the paper you have to study for the exam, or you can have three perspectives on why government will put restrictions on the land use. Restrictions on the power of the owner. And I think they are all three valid. Only they depend on maybe your political views, how you look at the world in general, to see what perspective you like the most. First of all, I think, where will we see this perspective? Chicago or in Delft? Public land law restrictions are restrictions on the absolute power of the property owner. I think in Chicago, it's the American perspective. We are free and the government is restricting us. The second one, there, those restrictions are fact determining content. Yeah. It is a bit in the middle, I think. I'm not sure about the, but you can argue about it. If you see how the right of property is formulated in Article 1, Protocol 1, you see that in fact the first one seems to be the starting point. But it was maybe also a political choice at that time. The reason it was not easy, maybe one of the most difficult things was while all the people from the member states were gathering to decide, to draft the convention. The fact that it is in Protocol 1 and not in the convention itself was because they considered the whole idea of restricting ownership as a difficult issue. Especially some countries were afraid that it would give, that article would give, at the moment we restrict the rights of the owner, that it would give the government the right to get the ownership, to nationalize companies. So that was very difficult. I think indeed, later on, so we had a nice text, it was the protocol, so it was not in the convention itself. Later on, they agreed on the text how to protect the right of the owner and fundamental right to ownership. And later on, when the court gave its interpretation how to really to use that article, is more like the second one. Those restrictions are inherent to ownership. But it's something difficult, it's sort of not difficult, it's so different than the original ideas, I think, that came up in the political debate. So also, you can see from that your political ideas about the right of ownership are important for the whole starting point, also the interpretation. How should we address land use planning, and to focus again on land use planning. And then the third one, they mentioned specific powers that can be exercised from the right of ownership. So the kind of middle perspective. think so, I don't know. Am I right or wrong? The first one, we put a lot of emphasis on the right of the owner, absolute, and unrestricted. The second one, we say, no, okay, but ownership as such is limited. You cannot do everything with your land. The third one.
It's like the bundle of sticks. They have some stuff.
Yes, yeah, that's the common law perspective, the British perspective. Ownership as such, there is not, it is always a collection of rights, bundle of sticks. And yeah. But the main message is we need restrictions. We cannot leave it to the market forces. We cannot say that the best solution will come when everyone will pursue its own interests. And that is scarce. When you look from an historical point of view, whether that switch from common good to exclusive use. Some countries that went earlier than other countries has also to do with farming. Was a nice example from it's now 1600 BC, I think. Well, maybe later on it's written down Homerus. I don't know why those English guys always change the nice original names. Homerus was down in the Ilias. There is someone was he defended a city against a monster. He defeated the monster, and they gave him a piece of land to use. This was written down around 700 BC. Actually, the war was around 1800 BC, so 3,500 years ago. And the text indicates you can have an exclusive rights on land. It was given to that hero. Small text, of course, poet, but it gives an indication that land is no longer common good. On the other hand, when the Dutch went to what's now New York, they met the people who were living there, and they made a contract, and they gave them some goods, and people living over there, the original inhabitants, tribes living over there, said, you can use that land. And there you got two conflicting perspectives. And for the people who were living on what was later called Manhattan, they could not believe in that someone could fence off the land and use it himself. Exclusive rights. No. The contract was originally something of an exchange for friendship. So, okay, we allow you also to use the land. But for Europeans, it was unclear that they couldn't understand that. So, there you see the clash of civilizations. One still believing in land is common good. We take care of it, all of us, while the Europeans, they focused on that. Their own ownership rights, exclusive, and it has of course also to do with the number of people living somewhere. Land as a common good will only work when you have limited people using the same resources. At the moment, you have a lot of people using limited resources. Then we will focus on exclusive rights. What came next, because the land use planning, the first part, it was recognized, I think, around 1900, 100 years ago. Slowly, government got more power. People started to understand that there was a need for control of this use. And after the Second World War, and I think it started with the report of 1972, discovered there are limits to growth, and the famous report called Limits to Growth. And we have to think about the future. And then the whole concept of sustainable development became more and more important. So land use planning is also about sustainable development. That you have to think not about what they are going to do today or next week, but how about the generations to come. And there you see also the link between land use planning and also land administration. Because now you're also aware that land administration, so the knowledge about what we can do with land, about rights, restrictions, and responsibilities, is also very important from the perspective of sustainable development. We need that information. That information also must be open so that we all can know about those rights, restrictions, and responsibilities. And this also, I want to emphasize, and we said we have land use, we have land ownership, and we have land value. That the whole land use planning will also influence the value of land. We have an example that where you can only use this for farming. In the Netherlands, the actual price is now €7 per square meter. While when I'm allowed to build on it, then the land itself, so this without the building, you have €700 per square meter. So at the moment, you're allowed to build on it, your land value will increase, while the land use planning restricts the use to farming. Value is down. Now, question to you. How does the government interfere with special developments? What tools do they have? You already heard the zoning plan. What is a zoning plan? When I use the word zoning plan, what do you think? You were a specialist. I heard somewhere you were a specialist. Zoning plan. Yeah. Yeah.
And then how do you integrate internally here industry there?
Yeah.
That's why it's kind of negative.
It is indeed that's our idea of planning. Yeah? You're designating specific use to, that's the reason why we call it zoning, to areas. When we are doing that, what's other bit also in your answer? What's the other thing? It's not only about okay, here you can have high-rise buildings like that. And here low-rise. I'm making a plan, and only is this enough? No. What do we need as government?
We talk about every public needs and everything, we should be all together in like this for everything.
Yeah, it's more about the tools. You understand, you have a feeling with the bestemmingsplan in Dutch? You have ever seen it? Yeah, I have nice pictures of bestemmingsplan. Sorry, that's in Dutch. I always use, by the way, not zoning plan, but you can also speak about land use plan. Sorry. We call it a bestemmingsplan. Bestemming is the designation of the land. So it's indeed what you call, what the other people call zone. And the zone is has a certain use. Give to it as government, as planner, as town planner.
For like tools, you mean certain land government or like the partial schemes and like land use?
Yeah, no, you go very. I don't know what you understand, but I'm searching for one simple concept. You know, I'm a lawyer, so what I'm thinking about. Right, yeah. I would say rules. Rules. Yeah. And then we know rights. And first, we start with the right. That's the landowner. And responsibilities is always a bit difficult for me, but I think that has to do with the whole idea, of course, also of sustainable development. We have also to do things, and we have a responsibility, or we need to maintenance. But that's not so very clear. Unless Peter, you have very good examples from cadastre where we find that's
to maintain waterways, ditches for otherwise the land would drown.
Yeah.
So the water would keep flowing, and I remember examples from Finland that there were, say, ice picks in the winter hanging on the roof, and that you are, as an owner of the building, responsible to remove these ice picks because if they go down sidewalk, pedestrians can be hurt. Or and so you have to maintain your property in the interest of others.
Yeah. Now, that's very good examples, and those are your responsibilities. And I'm always struggling with that. I also wonder if we should put that in land administration, but I'm not sure. But that's something we'll debate maybe. But in any case, what we're talking today is those restrictions. And again, for a sheet, you can have several perspectives on this. You can also say, no, the land use plan is not restricting me to use that as I want to do. No, it gives an opportunity to have houses here, and the government will plan if it could be high rise or low rise, or farming or industry, whatever. So it gives an opportunity. But I think most common is to see the land use plan as giving restrictions. But in any case, you would say giving rules. Don't forget that, because we have a lot of pictures, we have a lot of maps. Of course, the most nice thing about the land use plan, those maps and the whole infrastructure around it, and the geo information and such. But don't forget, there is also the legal thing behind it. A lot of letters, a lot of words giving rules. Those are the restrictions we are talking about. Those are the public, it's a part of the public law restrictions. Telling the landowner what you are allowed to do. Before the break, with something I should make very clear, that maybe you know already, that we should make efficient between what is public law and private law. And today we're talking about a lot about the public law restrictions, the government acting in a relation between you and me and the government, or also government itself. Rules about how the municipality, the local government, has to act in the relation with the national government. But maybe it is about the relation we have and the government. Something else, and things that we'll find in that relation permit, I allow something, or the famous public law restrictions. I'm restricted in my freedom imposed by the government. That's something else that back to the field of what I call traditional cadastre. What we find there are those rights: ownership, release, easement, but also there are contracts. And that's a world of we as an individual, making legal arrangements between each other. We can have a contract. I am the owner of the laptop. And to make it a bit complicated, but I cannot make it more easy, is that also the government can use private law as a tool, because also the government can be the owner of land. It is a good example taken from Amsterdam. If you have a look at the property map of Amsterdam, you will notice that with the exception of the area within the canals, so the traditional old city, everything is owned by the municipality of Amsterdam. Not only the roads, not the parks, not only the parks, but also the land where all the houses are standing on. It's owned by the municipality of Amsterdam. Now, someone from the US would maybe think it's in a communist country. How can this happen? The municipality is owning all the land with the houses on it. So they're renting. No, then I should explain that person, they're not renting, they have a right, but there's less than ownership. We call it in Dutch erfpacht. So you can transfer it. This looks like ownership, but it's less than ownership. It is a lease, leasehold. And so we would call it leasehold in UK. So you have a right with less than ownership. And what is interesting to notice is that the municipality of Amsterdam, in the position of being the landowner, makes use of that to achieve public goals. Most people having a lease in Amsterdam will say that it seems that the public goal is mainly getting money because you have to pay the municipality for using their land. And the pity is that the payment that in some sense is related to the land value. And the land value, that is related to what people want to pay for that lease when they sell it. So you can sell the lease, someone will buy it, and that influences the land value. And that also influences, and that's a bit complicated, the whole mechanism between them. But it will influence at the end also what you have to pay to the municipality of Amsterdam as a landowner. But that's the most, what people will feel. You have to pay for the use of the land. But on the other hand, the municipality will say, no, it's very good that we have this position because on one hand we want to restrict the land use. And that's a bit funny because we could also say, but why would you use land ownership to put that restrictions? You can also do that by using the zoning plan. And that's a bit of historical background because they started around 1900 with this system, and at that time there was no legal basis for having a zoning plan in the Netherlands. So if the municipalities want to put restrictions on land use, they make use of lease. Land use plan was something after the second problem. Something else is also, yeah, you can counter land speculation, that someone will buy land and does not going to do anything, just waiting until the land value will increase and then sell the land again. So when you have a lease, you have to build on it. You cannot leave it empty. And yeah, there's all the side of paying to the municipality. Yeah, at the end, the whole community will benefit from the increased land value. It's not a private owner who will benefit from it. Again, our visitor from the US will say, what is this? Really communist here? No, the municipality of Amsterdam says no. And the land value will increase. We get money from those leases, people have to pay it, and we invest it back into the city. That's the funding of our roads and our parks. So all the things that the individual landowner will pay for. Again, someone who is very critical will say, how did you have tax for that? Why pay again? And I get my tax I have to pay as a user of that land, and I have to pay again to the municipality because they're also the owner of the land. There's indeed a political debate, and if you follow it, you see that there's still at the moment in Amsterdam a whole political debate about the whole system. And the more liberal parties want to abolish this, while the left and the left-wing parties really want to keep this system. But keep this in mind, I'm not going to talk more about this, but next to that, public land restrictions, also the government may use, but it depends on the system itself, so the place itself, on the country itself, make use of private law to reach public goals. Okay, and now it is 1:30, now it is time for having a break and have some coffee, and I will see you back at 11:50.